Hi and welcome to my channel once again, and welcome to my beach party. As you can see behind me, I am of course sitting on the beach, and I've brought my settee with me as well. It's been quite difficult to get this down onto the beach, but yeah, it's sunny and it's warm, and yeah, I've been out for a swim this morning, of course. So we're just experimenting with a bit of green screen behind me to see how this works. Today we have something a bit different as always, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Eagle comic. Well, actually not the Eagle comic, but the Eagle Annual. And some of you will know that the cartoon strip that featured in the Eagle all those years ago was Dan Dare. Now we're going to actually have a look at one of the annuals that I've got, and not this one. This is number one actually. This is the first edition of the annual that came out in 1951. And as a boy in the household, we had a number of these. They were actually my brother's books, but me being quite young, I was able to actually flip through some of these pages and understand some of the content. It was really marketed for the older boy. So the first comic to come out was in 1950, and it finished publication in 69. Was founded by a chap called Marcus Morris, who was actually a vicar, and his intentions were for this comic to instill Christian values to younger children, well, to children, to teenagers, and children probably from the age of 10 upwards, I would guess. The rivals to this comic was The Lion, but it seemed to be quite a different type of comic at the time, because unlike the other comics that were around at the time, like the Rover, the Hotspur, and the Magnet, they tended to have stories that were just written in text. And what the Eagle comic did was it kind of introduced this idea of a comic strip. And of course, one of those comic strips was Dan Dare, and we'll have a look at Dan Dare in a minute. Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future. So we're going to have a look at the pages of one of the annuals. So as I say, these are what the annuals looked like at the time. You can see that it's unlike comic annuals during my time, probably during the 60s, it's quite a thick annual, and it's properly bound here with cloth. It's a proper book with hardback covers that are, thick. It's a substantial book, and I suspect, not sure what the price of this is. I don't think the price is on it, but I wouldn't think that many families at the time probably could afford this. It was probably for the middle class kind of families or children, I would expect. I'm not sure how we came to have some of these, because I certainly didn't come from a middle class background, but certainly my brother had probably 2 or 3 of these annuals. Now they disappeared, these annuals that we had at home. I'm not too sure where they went, but they went, as things do. And later in life I kind of scoured the internet, and I found several of these annuals for sale, so that's why I now own a fair few of these Eagle annuals. So let's change to the other camera and let's have a look at the pages of volume 6 Eagle Annual. Okay, so here we are with volume 6, number 6, Eagle Annual. And as I said before, this isn't the family's copy. This is one that I've bought a few years back. Great news strips, stories and articles. Let's turn over, and this is the kind of cover page with all sorts of interesting things that boys might be interested in. So, the first page of interest, we have a dedication, and it says, to my darling Tony, wishing you a very happy Christmas for 1957. 7's been crossed out, 1956 has been put in. All my love and kisses from Auntie Joy. Kiss, 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 kiss. I expect Tony probably wasn't actually happy about all those kisses from Auntie Joy, but hey, you know, that's how things were back then. So it says here the 6th Eagle Annual, and we're not going to go through every page, but we're going to kind of look at some of the features in this book, and kind of note down some of the ones that are particularly interesting. Contents here: stories, adventures, etc., sport, hobbies, etc., interests, a whole variety of things. So as we go through this, this first story, the 3 J's in Crash Went the Window. A kind of typical boys story there. I want to kind of flip through some of these until we get to there's another kind of comic strip there. What's that one called? Jack-o'-lantern with Rolo in the golden, what that means there. Anyway, let's move on. Looks like Toby Man. Toby Man? Highwayman? So, the first page of interest. Not only was there stories in here and comic strips, but there were things for boys to do, to make. And in this one, it's how to make your own crystal set. And our family, or my brother, actually made this from all sorts of things. Wood, coils of wire, all sorts of things. So the reason we're looking at this really is that this was one of the things that we actually made from this actual annual, and it worked. My father got some headphones from the BBC, and you could listen to the radio on a crystal set. Be interesting to probably try and make this again. Mind you, there probably isn't anything transmitted that you could pick up. And just go through some of the other pages, and we get to Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future. And of course, because Dan Dare is one of the main comic strips, it's produced in colour, and the 2 guys that produced the illustrations for Dan Dare were Frank Hampson and Harold Johns. Very detailed cartoon for the time. There's the Mekon up in the corner there. He was the arch villain of Dan Dare and features in this particular strip. So a few pages of Dan Dare there. Fantastic illustrations and artwork from these guys. Probably much better than what you'd see in the 60s. Well, it certainly was. It was more cartoony then. Then we have an article about vertical takeoff aircraft, something that was probably just being thought about during the 50s. And then some other illustrations of other aeroplanes that have a vertical takeoff theme to them, and some futuristic drawings here. Gold in the Mountains, another strip. This one's in black and white, and a crossword there. Interesting. Of course, every boy then had a toolkit, unlike today probably, taking care of your tools. So a whole article and some pictures on how you would look after the tools that you might have as a boy. Very different from today. Article or pictures on motor cars through the ages. Now this is a story with a few pictures, not a comic strip. Looking for Trouble, the story of the Gallant Ocean Rescue Tugs. So a lot of these stories were really based around kind of trying to promote into those young boys that would be reading these stories an element of mystery and kind of encouragement as to kind of trying to influence the boys that would be reading these articles into you know, adventure and looking for adventure in the world. Comic strip, a proper comic strip this time with cartoony type characters. This one's called Harris Tweed. Pleasure Cruise, this story's called. So that's more like the cartoony type of strip that you might see. Another story, this one's called Jet Jackson Pilot. Again, it's trying to give these young boys some enthusiasm as to what they might get into as adults, to promote sort of kind of that kind of element of mystery and need to find out, I guess. Looking after your camera. I mean, kind of, if you had a camera as a boy then in the 50s, you probably had quite a wealthy family, I would guess. So a lot of detail there about your camera and how to look after it. Comic strip on Robinson Crusoe, a few pages on that. Then a nice kind of double page feature on North American Indians and the different tribes and where they were situated. Some of this of course is a little bit well, let's say not politically correct, I would say, but at the time it was pretty harmless, and nobody really got upset by any of this, I wouldn't have thought. Story about cricket, running. Sport was a big feature in the Eagle. The comic obviously wanted to kind of encourage youngsters to play sports, and a lot of youngsters did, obviously. Another comic strip called The Wailing Wall. Rustlers of the Firth. Again, another non-strip story. And then we got a feature on Britain's railways. So at the time diesel locomotives were just coming in, but we have plates here of the old steam trains, and I would guess a bit of history about how these new locomotives were kind of came into fashion. Let's skip over a few pages. A whole page here on soccer hints. And as always, boys were very much into soccer at that time. Flight test. Article about aeroplanes. And oh, this is an interesting article here, a den of your own, as if a child at that time would have the ability to have a separate room of some sort out in the garden, a shed with all of this inside. Yes, I'm not sure that was kind of achievable for most children back in the 50s, unless you had quite a wealthy family. Another cartoon. Let's flip over a few of these pages. How to make a shark. So you had plans in the book here to buy some balsa wood and make a model boat, and how you might put that together, some details here. Electric powered cabin cruiser. Again, if you had the parents that had the money to buy the parts for some of this, all well and good, but probably outside most children's ability, I would think. There you go, all the plans for all the balsa wood. Another feature about racing car driving. Mike Hawthorne, the Farnham Flyer, and this is obviously a factual. I'd guess this is a factual kind of story or something like that. I'm not sure. The croc shooters, probably not sort of thing that you'd see today. Something about shooting crocodiles. I wouldn't have thought that would have been something you could detail today. Telepathy, all sorts of stuff you can, and card tricks here, a card trick. So a comic strip here, another colour comic strip called Jeff Arnold in The One Man Horse. Cowboy stories were still of interest during the 50s. There was a lot of cowboy type films on TV, and cowboys and Indians were a big thing still for schoolboys at that particular stage. Now I'm just going to flip through these cartoony type stories here. They are very cartoony. We have an article about the Tour de France, and you always had kind of with these illustrations with sports events, you always had a very powerful image of the sportsman, this kind of square-jawed, muscly, kind of determined man on his bike here, and that would be kind of the nature of all of these illustrations, to show you sports in action, whether it was cycling in this particular instance or motor car racing or whatever it is. There was always this very keen determination on the faces. There's another one here. Look at this guy here. He's kind of really he's heading for the winning line, I would guess. His concentration and his muscles, these huge muscles, obviously something that a young boy would look up to and want to emulate, I would guess. You know, there's a guy falling over there. Cartoon strip, I think this one was quite a famous one. PC-49, The Case of the Tiny Tech. Not sure what that's about, but I understand PC-49 was one of the, next to Dan Dare, was probably one of the comic strips that people loved. Red Fire for Danger, another fiction story about trains, I think. The Chelsea Dynamo, so a story about football here. Again, you know, this is a boys annual, so football's going to be big. And then towards the end you've got some, well, some quizzes and some things to make, but tricks and things like that. The whole magazine, or annual rather, the whole book is just full of detail and information. There is so much in this annual. And the marvels of bird migration, so a story about why the birds migrate. There's just something in here, I suspect, for everyone, but it's nothing like what preceded it or came after. It's just jam-packed full of stuff, rather than these very, very thin annuals that you see today. That's the back cover. And on the back here it just advertises the fact that it's a companion to Girl, Swift and Robin. I suspect those might be other comics. Obviously Girl is for girl, but these may be. Swift and Robin were probably for younger children. Well, that was the Eagle Annual, and I hope you enjoyed looking or flipping through those pages. Something of a bit of a bygone age really, and well, some of you watching this video probably weren't alive during that time, but it's just an insight into the publication or the publication material that was available to teenagers during the 50s and 60s, and quite different now, I would guess. Sadly lacking in some respects. I suspect that these annuals and the comics themselves were probably responsible for driving young men into kind of all sorts of things really, and giving them some inspiration. I'm not quite sure what's available today that would actually do that. And anyway, quite a different video this time, but I hope you liked it, and of course on the next video it probably will be something completely different, who knows. So keep safe, and I'll see you on the next video, and who knows, I may not be on the beach next time. Bye for now. Bye.